Well, we got the sneak peek we didn't ask for. This was a huge mistake. From a PR perspective, this was probably the worst set of clips to show. But we're going to get into exactly what Meghan's motives were and what how she thought this would come across to people, and how it actually came across to people, and all the problems involved with Meghan's teaser for her show with Love Meghan, which is debuting. It should be like right about today when I am posting this video, or tomorrow. Today or tomorrow when I'm posting this video, it should be coming out. As you guys know, I'm a little bit slow to get videos out, but I will try my best to get videos out on her show as quickly as I possibly can. But please, do subscribe so you do not miss them when they do finally come. So I will try to include the sneak peek clip, but I bet it will get copyrighted. So last time that happened, they took like a month to release it for fair use. So I will just have to cut it out. But I will have it running on silent, on mute, with subtitles over here so that you can read along with what was said exactly and see for yourself exactly and make your own opinions on what was said. But my first impressions were that it really just showed a sort of caricature. It really came across that way, of Meghan portraying a character that she made up that's just kind of not fun. In this clip, she's talking with Chef Choi, who I think he has a show or something. He has a show, I think, called The Choi of Cooking, which is clever. I like his branding. That's good. The part that stood out to me as the most cringe, there were several, but the probably worst and most clumsy part of this is when she asks him if he listens to music while he cooks, and he says yes, and he lists some various genres, including death metal and speed metal. And she pretends that she doesn't know what speed metal is or what metal is. Like, basically, you can deduce what speed metal is, can you not? I mean, my goodness, what a ridiculous question. But she's got this look of fake shock on her face, and it portrays almost as if she's concerned that Chef Choi would listen to such things while cooking. That's what this looks like. Concern. Not surprise, not like, oh my gosh, that's so funny and weird of you, or what a unique choice, or oh my god, I would never. It's not that, the way you would with a friend. It's like, how could you? How concerning. That's what her face looks like here, which is ridiculous. If you're chatting with somebody and socializing with somebody and they have something kind of unexpected to you, then that's not how you behave. That's not how a normal person would behave. They wouldn't be like concerned with it and like alarmed. It would be more, like I said, kind of like, oh, that's funny, or that's unique, or I'm surprised, I can't believe that, something like that. You wouldn't do this. This is weird. This is contrived. She says that doesn't sound like the Choi of Cooking, in a sort of snappy tone. It definitely came across as really pretentious, as if it was an unacceptable choice. And this moment right here came across as very narcissistic to me, because it's not what she wanted to hear. It wasn't what she expected. It's not what she wanted to hear. It's not something she can connect with. She doesn't like it. She doesn't like his answer. And so that shows up on her face. She hated that that's what he said. If he would have said something else, then she could have maybe said, well, I like this and that, or, oh, I like that too. But since it didn't have that and it's not what she wanted to hear, this is how her face turns out, because she disliked what he said because it didn't suit her vision of how this conversation would go. And that's exactly what toxic people tend to do. If you're not giving them exactly what they expect, then they start to show dislike on their face. It doesn't fit her ideas, it doesn't fit her taste, and therefore it's problematic. It's bad. And that's the vibe that she sends with her nonverbal communication here and her verbal communication, that it's a questionable choice of his and that it's a problem that that's what he decided, which is really unfortunate. So I really think that Meghan thought that this moment here would come across like surprise, like she's being funny or personable or maybe even cute. Like, oh my god, that's what you listen to? I think she thought it would come across as like she's so surprised to hear this news in a quirky sort of a way, or a girly sort of a way. She thought it would be cute, perhaps, but it didn't hit that way at all. It hit in a sort of mean girl vibe. And I think this is part of the problem with her trying to act girly and innocent all the time. It feels so contrived because it's just not normal. She's a mature woman and should be behaving in a mature way. And there is so much more fulfillment in looking at things through a more mature lens because you're able to see things in a more complex way. But even with all her talk of not being categorized or stereotyped, or her erroneously saying archetypes, constantly discussed, oh, people are so much more than just one thing. People are multidimensional. People shouldn't be categorized or labeled, basically is what she was saying. Very outdated take, I know, but that's what she was saying and what she was pushing. She does it to him. That, like, he shouldn't be listening to that because that's not the joy of cooking. And she has this look of shock and surprise rather than what she thought would come across more, I guess, personable or cute even. But it just didn't hit. And it contradicts what she even says. And then she's like, yeah, that's true. We're multidimensional folks. Well, Meghan, that's what you have always said. So why don't you practice what you preach? But I'm racking my brain trying to figure out how else she could have possibly thought this would come across and want the audience to take this. I can't think of anything except she thought this would come across as playful, which brings me back to one of my biggest complaints with Harry and Meghan doing these types of projects or interviews of any kind. They don't have a good sense of humor. They just don't. And so when they do stuff like this, it doesn't come across as funny or charismatic. It comes across as mean, not nice, judgmental. This came across very judgmental. How do you think she expected this to come across? I'm curious to know your thoughts. But also, there's all these awkward pauses. Like, he throws her a bone of, like, she said, oh, the best part of Koreatown was the all ages clubs where you could go do karaoke and stuff. He agrees and says that he was part of a dance troupe or something like that. And she doesn't lean into this the way a normal host would. Typically, when you're the host of a show, whether it be a daytime talk show or a cooking show, where you have guests come and you're not just like showing people how to cook, because we know it's clear at this point she's not going to really show us how to cook anything. But when you have a guest on, you're supposed to kind of interview them and find out interesting stuff about them. And this is the problem that Archetypes had. She never really dug into what the guests were bringing. Every time they brought one thing, she would pick that thing up and bring it over to her side and talk about how that was the same for her or worse for her, or she had it bigger, badder, or different. She always brought it back to herself. And that made for a very boring podcast. And it also makes for terrible conversation. I'm sure you can think of some friends or family members or people who every time you share a story or every time someone shares a story, that one person who's kind of toxic or maybe just not great at socializing, maybe they're not a very good conversationalist, it's not always nefarious, will always just bring it back to themselves. Like, oh yeah, I had that happen one time, but in my case, it was like this and that and the other thing. And it was so much worse or bigger or better or whatever. They make it about themselves. And again, it's not always on purpose or bad. And sometimes it does fit. The thing is sometimes that makes sense. But when you see it happen every single time, it's a pattern that's indicative of somebody who's not really, they don't really care what you have to say. They're not really interested in learning about you at all. And that's what I fear is going to happen in this Netflix series based on this clip. The Meg, instead of asking him more about dance, does he keep doing it? How long did he do it for? Did it contribute to his connections in cooking and, how did it impact his career? Why did he pivot away from it? Why doesn't he do it anymore? Etc. What was his favorite clubs to go to or his favorite places to go to? Or did he perform? All of these things would have been interesting questions and engaging and shown the audience more about Chef Choi. Instead, the Meg is like, yeah, and it's so fun and nobody ever talks about those dances. What is she talking about? Why would anybody be just talking about dances randomly? And anyway, he tries to bond with her and throw her a bone again, and she's just silent after he says, we have a lot in common. We should have met ages ago. And she's just quiet. And she nods her head, but she doesn't give any sort of a verbal response. And remember, they're looking at the food that they're cooking right now. Well, he's cooking, she's arranging. They're looking down. So a verbal feedback is required, basically. She just lets that hang there awkwardly. Super weird, super strange. Also came across pretty narcissistic because they take things, but they don't return them. She didn't validate that or reciprocate that. She just took it. Like, yeah, I bet you wish you were my friend a long time ago. That's kind of the vibe that it gave. Super awkward, super poor social skills. But it also showed me that he is relatively practiced with continuing to move conversation along and talk to people he doesn't necessarily want to talk to or doesn't necessarily have much in common with. He kept a pace better than she did. And she was the host of the situation. So he sort of outshined her in terms of conversation. It was super cringe. It was super bad. It didn't serve her well, and it didn't make anybody excited for the show. It just revealed it to be bland and cringy and awful. Also, by the way, the trailer has way more dislikes than likes. When I checked yesterday, out of 93,000 views, which isn't terribly high for something like this, I don't think its reach is quite as wide as Netflix anticipated. It has 1,448 likes and 11,744 dislikes. That's rough. That's not just people who follow the royal family and, don't like Meghan because of the things that she's done and the choices she's made and her bad behaviors. It's not just those people. This is just normal people who follow Netflix's YouTube account and watch their trailers. And they're like, oh, this doesn't look good. That's a problem. It doesn't bode well, but we shall see. As I said, I'll be back as soon as I can with coverage of the Netflix show, and there's lots more already on the schedule for the upcoming weeks. I'm trying to get more style tutorials out as per your requests, and of course we have the Oscars fashion editions coming up as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a happy day ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye!